bigger conversation and where to start is that things we don't even realize are causing our stress. And so we sort of talk about the different categories of symptoms. So you can have cognitive symptoms, emotional, and physical symptoms. So in that way, we're really looking at a lot of different categories of stressors. So like the emotional symptoms or the emotional indicators, especially right now, feeling lonely, craving those salty, fatty, sweet foods are also emotional indicators.
Welcome to Salad with a Side of Fries. I'm your host, Jenn, talking wellness and weight loss for real life. We're here to clear up the myths, misinformation, bad science, and marketing to teach you how to eat and how to cheat. Are you ready? I'm having salad with a side of fries. Happy New Year, my friend. Welcome back to Salad with a Side of Fries. I'm your host, Jenn. This week, we're doing something a little different. So you may remember Mike Millner. He joined us to talk about matching your workouts with your personality. So that was episode 80, which aired in February of 2021. Before that, though, Mike interviewed me on his podcast called Mind Over Macros. Today, you're going to hear that interview. So this is the interview where Mike interviewed me on his show. And I think it's super fitting to kick off the year as we're heading back into life after some time off, hopefully. And I feel like we're often adjusting to, normal routines, but also trying to hold on to that vacation ease, right? And if you're like me, that actually sometimes brings added stress. And for so many of us, really, stress is the great disruptor when it comes to body transformations. So this episode really reminds us of the impact of stress. More importantly, though, what we can do about it. And be sure to listen all the way through. Towards the end, Mike asked me my favorite question I've ever been asked in over 80 interviews on other people's podcasts. So make sure you hang on for that. Now, because you're going to hear Mike doing the interviewing, I want to tell our members what they're getting this week before we start. So members, your recipe for this week is for crispy Parmesan eggs with radicchio and pea salad. It's surprisingly easy, great for weekend brunch. I feel like it's kind of like keeping the vacation vibes going on the weekends when we make these brunches, and maybe too, since Omicron seems to be running rampant, that maybe you're not going to as many restaurants as you were. So this is like restaurant brunch in your own kitchen for sure. So if this recipe sounds good to you and you're curious about the membership, here's the scoop. Go to glow.fm/salad with a side of fries. For just $10 a month, you get weekly recipes, a monthly article or tool, extra discounts from me and our partners, plus live Q&A sessions with me. It's a total deal. Really, when you take advantage of the full offerings, you save far more than that $10 cost. So I always say this, but seriously, a no-brainer way to show yourself that your health is a priority. Plus, by being a member, you support this podcast and this community so we can continue bringing you new episodes and experts every single week. So remember, all you have to do, go to glow.fm/salad with a side of fries, or forget remembering the URL, click the link in the show notes. There's a clickable link there. If you want to do it now. Unless you're driving, don't do it if you're driving. Once you're there, click support now, type your email and enter your payment info, then tap subscribe, and you're done. You'll get this week's recipe for the crispy Parmesan eggs with radicchio and pea salad. All right, turning it over to Mike Millner of Mind Over Macros podcast, and I'll be back to you at the end for this week's nutrition nugget.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Mind Over Macros podcast. As always, I'm your host, Mike Millner, and today I had a very special guest on. I had Jenn Trepic. She is the host of a fitness podcast called Salad with a Side of Fries. She's a health and nutrition coach who brought a ton of knowledge to the show. This was an amazing conversation. We talked all about stress and broke it down scientifically, intellectually. This is digestible information that is going to be massively helpful on your journey. Trust me when I say that you want to listen to this episode intently. And I would love to hear if you were as mind blown as I was during this conversation. I want to know about it. So take a screenshot, post it on Instagram, tag us both. You can tag me at coach_Mike_Millner, and you can tag Jenn. She is at Jenn Trepic. That's JENNTREPECK. Enjoy the episode. All right, guys, I have a very special guest with me. I have Jenn Trepic, who I'm super excited to talk to. We just found out that we're not too far from each other. Jenn's in New York. I'm right outside of Philadelphia. So it's nice to have another East Coaster. I feel like every episode I've been doing lately has been with West Coasters, and the time difference and everything.
I know. Me too, actually. Hi, everybody. Yeah. So I also have a podcast, and same thing. I keep interviewing these West Coast residents between California, Portland. I had somebody in Canada, but it was also like the west side of Canada.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm super excited that you're on. First of all, your podcast is called Salad with a Side of Fries, correct?
It is.
Yeah. Such a great name. People always compliment my podcast name, which is Mind Over Macros, but I feel like yours is pretty good. You got me beat on that one.
I don't know. I like yours too. Okay. It's all good. All right, yeah. Cool.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. Before we get into it, we're going to talk all about stress today, which is one of my favorite topics. But before we get into that, I love the fact that when we get into this industry, we usually have our own personal story for why and how and all of that, which I always love to hear. So why don't you start by just sharing a little bit about your background and how it all evolved and, how it got to where it is today?
Absolutely. So I grew up the skinny one in a family of dieters. I was a dancer, which probably also has its own host of challenges in there. But it was really between high school and college where it was the first time where I had to think about what I was eating in a different way and make an effort to go to a gym or do some things to move my body. And that is when the weight gain kind of started. And so for the next few years, when all that started, I was like, that's cool. Like, I know what to do. I watched my family do this. And I did what they did. I tried every diet under the sun. I did the up and down, the gain and the lose. And I remember I learned the program that I now teach and work with. I learned about it. And at the time I was like, no, that's okay. Like, I've got my thing. Like we all feel like at some point in time we have the answer, like we're good. And I saw people who were following this program and I noticed that A, they were keeping the weight off. And B, this woman is telling her story of losing like 140, 150 pounds. And at that point, she then started to sound like the teacher from Charlie Brown. Like I heard 0 words as I just stared at her and tried to understand. I'm looking at her, like she didn't have that skin hanging thing that you would expect from somebody who removed like the equivalent of another human attached to them, And so I'm staring at her and I'm like, I don't even see where 10 pounds would have been on your body, And so I was like, okay, get over yourself and look at this because there's something different that they're doing from what you're doing. And I found a coach, I followed the program, and it completely changed my life. It is the only thing that's allowed me to say I've kicked my food issues. And from then on, I set out on a mission to pay it forward because I think fundamentally what started this is a nutrition education that we're all supposed to know and no one ever taught us. So I was like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. At the same time, I was looking for something to do on the side of my full-time job because I knew I couldn't work for somebody else for the rest of my life. And I was like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. Like I was on a crusade to help people help themselves. And so that was late 2007. So it's been a minute. I built my business on the side of working full time till summer 2019. In that process, it was probably around 2015, maybe 2016. I ended up in adrenal fatigue from, which we'll talk about in a second, from working in hedge funds and building my business and burning the candle at both ends, like many of us do. And, even still, I'm working with my clients and doing the whole thing. And fast forward, left my full-time job July 2019, launched my podcast in August, and really have been, both feet in the wellness space since then. Although I've really been in this industry for almost, 14 years, whatever it is, 13, 14 years.
Yeah, I love that. It's there's a lot of similarities in your story and mine. It was funny because growing up, my entire family struggled with dieting, and they were all doing all sorts of crazy diets and struggling with disordered eating. And I was always like, well, I'm the lucky one. I was an athlete. It's like I never have to worry about this. I can eat what I want. And then I ended up having the same exact issues. It was right around after graduating college, and I didn't have sports anymore. I didn't have any organized activity, and and that led me down the path of chronic dieting, yo-yo dieting, and the exact thing. Like once we figure it out for ourselves, it's like there's this calling of like, I have to pay this forward. If I can help one person avoid all the dumb shit that I did, it's worth it. So who was the woman? What was the program that changed your life?
Sure. So the program I work with is called TLS. It stands for Transitions Lifestyle System. It's based on the book by Dr. Sherry Lieberman called Dare to Lose. Full disclosure, that book is like super 90s in its, presentation and the whole thing. But the science, she was one of the first people to really talk about nutrition and wellness from a functional medicine standpoint, and take the functional medicine approach to nutrition and lifestyle and, put it into a plan in that way. So I really focus, it's, traditionally, right, the full shebang is 12 weeks. We start focusing on this nutrition education and sort of relearning because a lot of what we've all been taught is actually based on economics, not based on science, and not based on physiology and what our body needs. And then we also get into habits and behaviors and all the things, because on some level, we all know what to eat. Yeah. And then we focus a lot on body composition. So it's not losing weight, it's removing fat. And there's a big difference. Like the scale is the most overrated barometer on the planet. Like you guys, if you're listening and you're married to your scale, get a divorce, throw it out, move on. Like it's the worst. Totally. So it's really a full spectrum program.
Okay. Awesome. I love it.
Yeah.
So what was the thought process from, you've been working on this for a while and having that side hustle and building your business and having a full-time job and everything that you've got going on. So what was the moment, if you can remember, or the thought process or the belief that needed to shift for you to just say, you know what, I'm going to go all in and jump in with both feet?
Yeah. So part of it is because I had been doing this for so long that I knew what it could look like. I had had this vision before. It wasn't all of a sudden like, ooh, am I going to do this? There was a very known quantity to what my life would look like and how I wanted it to work. Leaving and ultimately working for myself was always the objective. And I knew I was going to be leaving my full-time job. And I had set it up for myself in such a way that I didn't need to jump into the next thing. And I thought, I have a couple options here, right? I have a headhunter who I've been working with for years who has positions to send me to. But I knew at first I needed a break. And I thought, in that break, I'm going to do the thing that I've never done, which is focus entirely on my business and see what happens. And I sort of said, at least that's where I am right now, this month. And then a month later, the headhunter called and I was sort of like twitching at the sound of these, full-time roles. And I was like, okay, I guess that means I'm not ready. So, I'm just going to stick with what I'm doing. And now here we are over a year later.
Yeah.
And, I think it's one of those when getting the stress and craziness out of my system and working in where you are passionate and where you are excited and really making an impact for people, there's something so much bigger than that paycheck. And so that's where we're at. I knew I couldn't go back. I couldn't do what I had been doing for so many years because it was no longer serving me.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's the fulfillment side of things when you're serving something that's bigger than yourself and that like meaning behind it. It's personal, which just brings a whole other element of like your instinct is pulling you in that direction. You can ignore it. I know for me, I ignored it for a long time, but at some point it's like, you know what, I should probably pay attention to what my body and my gut is telling me and just jump in and go for it. And one of the things that is a good segue into our topic is the fact that you talked about establishing, solid foundational behaviors. And, a lot of times we get inundated with all of the bells and whistles. And I love how you framed it, that we've been taught basically economics because the diet industry is, in it to make a profit. And that's really a lot of the information that we get is to lose weight quickly, gain it back, and then have to sign up for another program. So talking about like a forever change starts with the foundational behaviors. And sometimes as part of that, we hear things like, drink water, move your body, all, eat vegetables, all of that stuff, which is great. And then there's this one that's always like, and manage your stress. And it's like, okay, but what does that actually mean? So from your personal,
I feel like that sentence just requires an eye roll after it. Like
Yeah.
that is the only reasonable response.
Yeah, exactly. So obviously it's important. We cannot get better if we're not managing stress, but there's so many layers to it. And it sounds like from your own personal experience, that was something that you went through going into adrenal fatigue, working, burning the candle at both ends. So how do you start to present that topic? Because it is multifaceted. There's so many different things we can talk about, from eustress to distress to all the different areas of stress and how our body perceives stress and stress hormones and all these different things. Like, where do you begin to make it digestible?
Yeah, this is a great question. And it sort of goes back. I want to pop back really quick to one thing you said about like the diet industry based on economics. And for that matter, the nutrition industry is based on economics. Like that food pyramid that we all grew up on, not science, not nutrition, economics, right? So it's coming at it from both sides, which makes our conversation and everything we're both doing like that much more important. So thank you for creating the space for this conversation. I just want to say that really quick. So starting the stress conversation, it really comes down to, when I'm working with a client, it ends up coming into the conversation because it's driving a lot of the behaviors and the habits and the choices. When, recently I do wellness webinars every month, and we recently did one specifically on stress and understanding, the bigger impact of stress, but more importantly, what to do about it. And I think, to your point, we don't need anyone telling us, A, manage your stress, or B, you know what causes your stress, right? Like we don't need to sit here and brainstorm through 25 things that are stressors in your life. I think the bigger conversation and where to start is that things we don't even realize are causing our stress. And so we sort of talk about the different categories of symptoms. So you can have cognitive symptoms, emotional, and physical symptoms. So in that way, we're really looking at a lot of different categories of stressors. So like the emotional symptoms or the emotional indicators, especially right now, feeling lonely, craving those salty, fatty, sweet foods are also emotional indicators. Low self-esteem, not feeling great about ourselves, that feeling of overwhelm, or you're easily agitated. Like I know when I am stressed because I'll be working on something and a text comes in and I am annoyed by that text. Like, why do they think they need this answer right now? And then I'm like, hold up. They have no idea what I'm doing. And so that's an indication, right? Those are like those emotional indicators of stress, right? Then the cognitive side is another one that I think is prevalent right now, similar to the loneliness, is like this constant worrying, that undercurrent of worry or anxiousness that is going under everything. And the reason why that's cognitive versus emotional is because maybe it's accompanied by a million thoughts going through your mind all the time. Or you can't remember, like you knew you were about to do something, like I walked in this room for what? Or you spend 5 minutes looking for your keys. These are signs of some of those cognitive indicators of stress that we don't even realize are associated with stress, right? Or we sit down to work on something and we just can't focus. Our brain is going to all the things on the list. And it's like, okay, I got to do this, but I got to get my stuff done. Like I got to sit down. That, those are the cognitive, indicators. And then we go to the physical. So this is a lot of stuff like, low energy or issues with sleep. The weight gain is a physical indicator. Clenching your jaw, whether while you're sleeping or while you're sitting at your desk, right? That muscle tension, like that neck pain. We sit here and we're like, oh, it's just because I'm sitting at my computer all day. Like, not really, like you were sitting at your desk even more this week than last week. Odds are they were relatively similar. It's the stress is getting into your muscles. And so recognizing a lot of these indicators are a function of stress is the first key, because I think a lot of times we try to address all these symptoms. So we're like, okay, well, my neck hurts. I'm going to find time. I got to figure it out. I got to get a massage. And we try to address all these individual symptoms instead of saying, maybe there's a way that I could address a whole lot of things by doing just a couple things.
Yeah, I love how you broke that down. That it's super important, because I think that's an issue across the board, is addressing the symptom and not getting to the root of it. I know for me personally, it shows up for like the short temper for sure is one of mine. The lack of like focus and mental clarity. I definitely get that brain fog, and it's always like I know that something's going on when like when I wake up is when I'm most creative. And when I go to write something and I'm like, man, I just don't have the words right now, I know that I'm under recovered. And I agree that the awareness piece is so important as the first step, because obviously if we're unaware, we can't make a change. And so just creating that awareness of like, here are some common symptoms. Where do you go from there? Because I think like stress is so fascinating to me because of the fact that it's the biggest disruptor of homeostasis. And like, even when you look at something like behavior change, and we look at like what's going on in our brains when we change our behavior, when we create a new habit, and we have these different levels of we can talk about like the pre-contemplation, contemplation, the actual process of creating a change. When we get to that point where it's a habit, the biggest thing to bring us back to default behaviors is stress. It's the number one disruptor. Then on the flip side of that, stress is necessary for growth. And that's, so it's like this amazing thing where like we can't just look at it in a under a microscope or in a silo, because stress, like I need to stress my muscles and break them down in order to grow bigger muscles. So there is stress that's needed for growth to occur. So it's always like we need the stress, but then we need the proper environment for adaptation to occur. And I think that that's what you're talking about when we have these symptoms that are basically sending the signal that the environment is not right. Like your body doesn't feel safe to change. So we're going to start to notice our bodies are very smart and adaptive and want us to survive. So it's like, let's just send these signals and hopefully this person will understand what message I'm sending. So once we are aware of those signals, where do we go from there? What do how do you start to balance that out and address the root cause?
Yeah. So I personally always start with a foundation of taking the emotional stuff out of it. Take it, right? Let's just start for a hot second to understand what's actually happening and why that's causing other problems. Because I firmly believe that when we have this knowledge piece of it, these decisions and choices can become intellectual instead of emotional. And a lot of times when we're in that stress response already, it's even harder to make a non emotional decision, right? So, starting with this more intellectual foundation. So, you talked about, needing that stress to build muscle and, needing, right, with this idea of distress versus eustress. So, eustress is the helpful stress that gets us out of bed in the morning, that makes us excited about life and things that are going on. And we need that stuff, right? Then there's the distress, which is, the stress that causes our demise in a lot of ways. And that's that whole cortisol response, right? That we've heard of. So the challenge with stress across the board is that our body's response to stress is exactly the same as when we were cavemen and hunters and gatherers, right? So in those times, the stressors were life threatening. It was saber-toothed tiger. Only one of us is going to survive, right? It's him or me. And so I either need to muster all the strength I have to fight this guy or to run as fast as I can and outsmart him and hide so that I survive. So that response, a lot of that response is actually adrenaline, and it's designed to be short-lived. Usually in the science, it's like 10 to 20 minutes is what that was designed for. So think about it, right? At some point, either one of you wins this fight or you have outrun, you're hiding behind the tree and you're like slowing down your breathing, you're no longer panting, right? Like that stressor has passed. The problem is now our stressors are the alarm clock, thinking about a presentation coming up, getting the notification of a new email, and you're like dreading, like, what's it going to be, right? So our stressors are much more intellectual. They are not physical, and therefore they are prolonged. So we get into this challenge when our body is in this stress response almost indefinitely and all the time. And the thing to understand is that when our body is in that cortisol stress response of prolonged stressors, right, that chronic stress, everything in our body that is non-critical for survival in the moment of fighting a saber-toothed tiger shuts down. So you know this, but your immune system shuts down, your reproductive system shuts down, your metabolism shuts down. You're not going to grow hair. All of these little things that we don't realize. But like, if what I need to do right now in my body is fight a saber-toothed tiger, I don't need to worry if my hair is growing. I don't need to fight off a pathogen. I don't need to, right, all these other things. It's not about digesting the food I ate. It is about fighting this tiger so I can survive. And so we're constantly living now in this state of trying to fight a tiger that doesn't actually exist, but our body is in that state of all these things shut down.
Yeah, and it's something that I always reframe it in a way where oftentimes we think like, why is my body doing this to me? Why are all these things happening? Why am I more prone to illness? Why is it shutting down my immune system? When you understand the body is built for survival, it's doing exactly what it was evolved to do, exactly what it's supposed to do. So like, for example, when, a lot of females and we coach a lot of female athletes and they come to us, like I haven't had my cycle in however long.
Yeah.
And when you think about the chronic stress, well, in an environment where you are running from a saber-toothed tiger, is it the most ideal time to have a baby? Absolutely not.
Right.
Like your body is very smart. Again, it's doing something to protect you, to keep you alive. So saving those resources, because it's like all hands on deck. We have to fight for
Right.
our lives. Let's depress the immune system. Let's shut off the reproductive system. Let's make sure that we have all energy available to handle this thing that's in front of us. And really, from an evolutionary standpoint, the only real chronic stress that we evolved to deal with was famine, was a
Mm-hmm.
lack of food coming in. So what we see is that the chronic stress response looks exactly like that. When you talk about the down regulation of metabolism, it
Right.
doesn't do us any good to have a roaring metabolism when we don't have any food coming in,
Right.
because then we would starve quicker. So all this stuff makes sense. I love how you kind of frame it intellectually, because it makes perfect sense when you break it down like that and you start to understand why it's happening, and then we can start to make better decisions. But we often see that now, like you mentioned, a lot of the chronic stressors are it's emotional, it's mental, it's all these things that are going on in our day-to-day life, that we have the work stress, the relationship stress, and all of these things, and our body under chronic stress is kind of reacting the same as if we were getting a lack of nutrients coming in, because that's really the only chronic
Right.
stress we evolved to manage. So that's where you could even be eating enough, and or eating very little and still gaining weight. You talked about that being the physical symptom. Why is that
Yep.
happening? Because your body's reacting as if there was a famine or lack of nutrients. It's the same response. So
Yeah.
um,
And we end up in this vicious cycle where that stress response causes us to crave the sugar, the salt, the processed foods, the alcohol, the coffee, right? The things that are going to help give our body that fast energy, that fast fuel to survive in those moments. And then we eat those things and we're more stressed out, which causes those extra cravings. It's like this vicious cycle. And so understanding like this intellectual piece of like those cravings are part of this chemical process of stress in the body. Like it's not your fault. You don't suck. It's not that you can't do things. Like that's not it at all. It is actually chemical in your body that you are craving those things.
yeah, absolutely. And that's an important thing in distinction to make, because it helps you feel like, okay, this is exactly what my body was designed to do. Especially when you're looking at it from the perspective of like, your body just wants energy in that moment. And it's like, well, is broccoli really going to get the job done? Probably not. Like, let me
Right.
get the calorically dense, high sugar. Again, like knowing what your body is after at that point in time helps to make a better decision. So as we enter that cycle that you talked about, how do we disrupt that cycle? How do we get out of
Yeah.
that?
Okay. So I want to talk about there's a handful of ways and we we could talk for days about like the emotional way to sort of get out of that cycle, right? A lot of people work with therapists and, have people that they call and they talk to, like, absolutely. But sometimes it's easier to just physiologically shift what's happening in our system. And that also creates the space to make some other decisions. So, physiologically, how can we make that shift? So, first is right the opposite of almost the foods that we crave. So, choosing dark leafy vegetables, dark green vegetables, the darker the better. Avocado, berries, tomatoes, nuts, plant protein. These are things that help support, right? They are actually stress reducing foods based on the studies. Okay, then I don't know how many of you guys have heard of the vagus nerve.
Mhm.
So, the vagus nerve is the rest and digest nerve of the body, which is very different from what happens when we're in stress, right? So if we can activate the vagus nerve, it chemically triggers the rest and digest system of the body. And so there's a few ways that we'll talk about to stimulate the vagus nerve, but realize also, so this nerve goes from the brain down, like the back of the brain, down through, your lungs and most of your organs, right? And down to the gut. So what's really interesting about it is think of it like a 4-lane highway. 3 of those lanes go gut and lungs and below to the brain. Only 1 lane goes brain to the gut. So if we can address this down here first, it makes the mental stuff easier. And I think we're always in this place of trying to start with the mental stuff, and it makes it even harder. So the foods we talked about. The other thing is our breathing. So breathing, when, like, think about it, like if you're stressed out and you're running from the saber-toothed tiger, how are you breathing? Or if someone walks in the room and you weren't expecting and you sort of gasp, right? You're like, like,
it's like
that
short
breath
chest breaths. Yeah.
is exactly, it's in the chest and it's very short. So if we can bring the breath down to really like the diaphragm, right? Like kind of think about it like belly breathing. And when you breathe, think about your lungs expanding like an accordion. So you're breathing like side to side, very wide instead of up and down with the chest. So breathing side to side, you want to inhale, go for 4 at least if you can, but the biggest piece is to exhale longer than you inhale. So we're slowing down the breathing. Breathing through your nose also increases nitric oxide, which is really helpful for the whole body. At the very least, if that's really difficult, breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth. You can also make a sound. So humming, using like the back of your vocal cords in that way, the vagus nerve passes right there. So humming stimulates the vagus nerve. Even, like when your ears are plugged on an airplane and you sort of hold your nose and breathe out and try to like pop your ears.
Yeah.
So that's actually called the Valsalva maneuver. And you don't want to do it too hard, but doing that a little bit activates the vagus nerve. You can, if you're very brave, take a bowl or a tub or whatever of ice water or cold water and put your face in it. Or some people instead will do like literally seconds, jump into an ice bath and jump out, or jump into a cold shower, run around, get the cold water on your face and jump out. These are all ways to activate the vagus nerve. Exercising, twisting, moving, doing the things, breathing the way you do when you exercise activates the vagus nerve. And another big one is human connection. So we're seeing it all over, you guys. We are however many months, like I keep joking that we're like a decade into 2020. Yeah. And like having where all this depression of this disconnection is setting in. Right? We were designed to be around other people. Even the introverts, I promise you, need that human connection. So whether that's call a friend, or do things like this. I mean, yes, human touch is incredibly important. If you have been without that, figure out a way to safely get some touch, whether that's a massage or seeing a friend or some family and, hugging them. It's underrated at how important that is for the body chemically. But realize too, whether it's just talking with a friend, again, talking stimulates the vagus nerve, using our voices in that way. So it's really important. But the other piece, I just want to say back to the breathing thing really quick. It's sending, not just with the vagus nerve, but it's sending a chemical signal to the body that the stressor has passed. When we breathe deeper and longer, it's a chemical signal, because remember, when that saber-toothed tiger has run away, we take a deep breath. We start to calm down. And when you're focusing on sort of the visual of the accordion and counting in your head for how many seconds you're breathing in. So like a great option is in for 4, hold for 7, out for 8. And when we're using one side of our brain to count and the other side of our brain to think about the, accordion thing, or maybe making a sound when we're breathing, using both sides of our brain makes it chemically impossible to think about anything else. And it can bring us back to this moment where we can then make another decision. Because odds are when we're stressed, we're thinking about something that already happened or has yet to happen. But when we're right here in this moment, we can figure something out. So it chemically makes all that happen.
Yeah, I love that so much. And one of the other fascinating things about activating the vagus nerve is you're actually increase your ability to learn and receive information. So one of the things is if you are connecting with a friend or having, a Zoom call with somebody or catching up with a relative, and you do that beforehand, you'll be more present in the conversation. You'll actually remember what they told you. I don't know if you've ever like had that follow up with a friend and you're like, yeah, we talked like last week, but I don't remember anything about your life. And probably because you were thinking about other things, there was a lot of stress. So doing that deep breathing beforehand, you will be more receptive. Or if you're just trying to, learn a new skill or anything like that, it is highly underrated and underutilized. What I love about the whole concept is I talk about this a lot, which is I focus a lot on psychology, and I always talk about how you can use your psychology to change your physiology, but it goes both ways, and you
Yeah.
can use your physiology to change your psychology. And that's exactly what you're talking about, where we can manipulate the chemical reaction in the brain to get us into a position of managing stress, to use that phrase again, but to get us to a place to make better decisions, and not just have a knee-jerk emotional reaction. I think one of the things that's so difficult, like you said, when we're in that stress response, we we don't have the awareness to create that pause. It's
Right.
just a knee-jerk reaction. Like we're in the moment, we grab the sleeve of cookies, and then we're like, okay, well, that felt good for a second, but now I feel even worse. And
That's that vicious cycle.
exactly.
Yeah.
So it's literally like the awareness, like we said, is the first step, and then having the awareness to create that pause, to then do some deep breathing and go through that process to then make a decision
Yeah.
from a more intellectual standpoint,
And I think what's interesting about it too is that it doesn't require us to, especially the breathing piece, it does not require us to like carve out a whole, like you don't need 30 minutes. You don't even need 10 minutes. It could literally be 3 deep breaths, which if you're doing, the 4, 7, 8 counting, you're at what, a minute?
Yeah.
Maybe a minute and a half if you go aggressive. Like it doesn't have to be that much. And in an effort to do 2 things, 1, to put it into your day, and 2, potentially support your metabolism, a great time to do it is right before you eat.
For
So
sure.
before we sit down to a meal, maybe just take a hot second, 2 deep breaths, send to the body that the metabolism can turn on, right?
Yeah.
And then eat your meal.
And one of the reasons that that's so important is because you mentioned when that stress response is activated, guess what's not happening? Proper
Exactly.
digestion. So are we getting the nutrients and vitamins and minerals that our body needs? We need to be in that parasympathetic mode in order for that to happen effectively and efficiently. I'm curious, when we look at like the overall kind of this like stress barometer machine that our bodies are, when you look at food, and not just food choices, but food quantity.
Mhm.
How do we support, because you mentioned, through your program, supporting body composition and fat loss versus weight loss and all of that. But they're, obviously eating in a calorie deficit is a stress on the body. How do we manage the food quantity to help support the stress that our bodies are under? Do you look at a combination? And this is something that, like, there's this debate about calories versus, food quality versus food quantity, and obviously they both matter. So I don't know why there's a debate going on, but like, what's your stance on that as it relates to stress?
Yeah. So I'm of the quality over quantity, philosophy, right? I think especially when our body is getting true nutrients, our macros and our micros, right? When our body is getting everything it needs, the quantities can take care of themselves, because your body knows when it doesn't need any more, antioxidants, which actually is never, but that's beside the point, right? But like your body knows when it's full. Our body only has so many signals it can send us. Hunger, thirst, pain, right? I mean, that's more or less the options of signals that our body has to us. So if our body is getting food, but it's not getting nutrition, it will constantly send hunger signals, because how many ways can it tell you what it needs? So a lot of the times when we're constantly getting those hunger signals, it could be a function of we're eating a lot of things, but we're not actually eating food. So that's a piece of it. And the more things we eat that are food-like substances, that impacts that stressor on the body of the food and the calorie situation. So I think a lot of times addressing it more in terms of what we're eating can take care of the quantity situation. And there are certain times, like the body needs different things every day. Like every day is not going to be the exact same. And so recognizing that too, like being hungrier isn't necessarily a bad thing. And it is going to be different day to day. So I think also recognizing that. And sometimes I think trying to overanalyze it just puts more of a stressor on us and adds to that vicious cycle. And so I think just relax about it. You're going to know as long as you're paying attention to how your body feels and what's happening and what you're feeding yourself.
Yeah. And I think the stress can disrupt those our ability to learn and reconnect to those signals, which is something that is pretty intuitive. I think we lose connection to
Yes.
that when we are in this like constant go go go, and we're not ever taking the time to just slow down and tune in. But I totally agree. Like I keep repeating myself, but our bodies are really freaking smart. So sometimes we
Exactly.
just have to trust them and tune in to what's going on. So when it comes to like the quality side of things, what does that look like in terms of balance? And I know that's another like buzzword that, we can have a whole side conversation about
Right.
balance, but like, what does that look like? Because, and I'm just going to use, reference your podcast name, Salad with the Side of Fries. When
Right.
do we incorporate the side of fries, and what does that look like? And, even just talking about it from a personal perspective or what you talk about with your clients.
Yeah, this is such a great question. So first of all, it requires a step back to say, where are you in relation to your goal? Where are you in your commitment level to getting to your goal? Because your commitment level and where you are in the process has a lot to do with the choices that we make, right? The choices that we're willing to make in any given moment. Ultimately, I believe our objective is living life by the 80-20 rule, right? It's 80% of the time we are making healthful, nutritious choices. 20% are those more indulgent choices. And so that's sort of the ultimate. Now, if you're just starting out and you're highly committed and you have a goal, whether it's, maybe you're working toward a bodybuilding competition, you're not 80-20 if you're working toward a bodybuilding competition, but that level of commitment and that goal are very different. And so we're making choices based on those factors. One of the things that I say to everybody is, and if you're taking notes, like this is one to write down, protein and fiber at every meal makes removing fat no big deal. So protein is clean, lean protein. Fiber is vegetables and sometimes fruit. And then the other element that you need is also quality fat. And so if we're getting those pieces, our body is also better equipped to handle the occasional indulgence and spike and things like that. And there are even ways where, focusing on blood sugar and keeping our blood sugar even, we're never pushing ourselves into what we call like the fat storage zones of our blood sugar and metabolism. And then, our body can handle the occasional spike in a better way than if you're right now constantly going up and down very dramatically.
Yeah, super similar to my overall philosophy. I talk about that all the time. It's like
Yep.
the 80-20, but then, what's the goal? Is it worth the sacrifice? And like let's talk about what that looks like from a lifestyle perspective, because sometimes it might not be worth it. And you're okay with, having a little bit more flexibility if it means sacrificing, body composition or whatever. But the more extreme the goal, then the more extreme you have to get in your, diligence and what you're willing to give up. So
Yeah.
just again, coming back
And
to that.
and I have a lot of clients who also have a history of eating disorders and disordered eating, and of course, trying a million diets under the sun. And so there are also times where we're saying, look, even though you are super committed and you have this, aggressive goal, I'm not recommending that we cut out X, Y, and Z, because that's a lot of these old habits. And so if we're willing to commit to a different timeline, then we can make this happen, in a very reasonable way. Like I'm a big fan of doing this in the same way that it will look like for forever.
Yeah.
So that it actually is for forever.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Completely agree. I'm going to ask a question that's probably impossible to answer, but I'd love to get your
Oh, great.
perspective on it. So,
Nothing like a setup.
yeah, exactly. Because we have similar philosophies, and I love the way that you framed the idea of we've been taught the economics of it and not the science of it when it comes to nutrition and dieting. How do we change that? How do we change, like, the diet industry is an $80 billion industry. It doesn't seem to be slowing down. The
Yeah.
amount of misinformation out there and access to information, it's faster and more widespread than ever before. How do we change the landscape, or even begin to start that process? Because it feels like, like we're trying to climb Everest and try and is it, I get asked this question sometimes and I don't have a profound answer. I say one person at a time, which is like my best way to try to, say it. But I'm curious on your perspective.
Yeah. So, oof. Um, this is a doozy, but I think we are working our way there. It is a process and it is systemic. And so it requires a systemic approach. So, yes, our health coaches and what we do, we're plugging along one person at a time. But I think it also requires our Western allopathic physicians to realize that they as well as coaches need to be agents of behavior change, which they are not. Our schools teaching our dietitians and nutritionists need to not be funded by Coke and Pepsi and Procter and Gamble and Unilever. And I have friends who work at a lot of those companies, right? But there's a lot of money in the food world that is playing a major impact on the state of health in this country. Because like I said, we are a country of people who are overfed and undernourished. And that is a function of our food supply. So I think we need to go even further back up the chain to policy and lobbyists and what qualifies as food in this country and the FDA's role in actually enforcing what limited food laws there actually are. And really going back to, I mean, going back, I don't know that we were ever actually there in terms of helping people really with nutrition. I mean, food deserts used to be referenced in terms of, a limited access to food. Food deserts are now defined as a limited access to nutrition because food is everywhere, nutrition is not. And so I think the way to move past all this is to start putting money toward studying nutrients, because that's not where the money goes, and I get it, right? Like if we're going to do a study and put money towards something, I can appreciate that we want to cure cancer. But if we started to study some of the vitamins and minerals and nutrients that we're losing in our food, we could probably get upstream, but we're swimming upstream for a while till we can get there. So I think, like you said, in the day to day, it comes down to each of us making the best choices that we can for ourselves and voting with, not to get political, but like every time you go to the grocery store, everything you buy, everything you spend money on, that's actually where you're voting. As much as you're voting at the ballot box and, everybody vote. I'm not saying that, but like pay attention to the little things every single day where you're voicing what you believe in.
Yeah, that was an amazing answer. That really was.
I'm glad this is recorded, so I know what I said.
No, that was perfect. To your point, my girlfriend has 3 kids. We live together. Her youngest is in 2nd grade, and she was doing her virtual learning in her room, and I overheard the video, which was talking about nutrition, and it was like, instead of eating a donut for breakfast, try a bagel and cream cheese. And I was like,
sorry.
And I was like,
by the way, you guys, like, you can't see my face when that's what Mike said. Like my eyes just bugged out of my head.
And I like almost ran in there and like grabbed the teacher through the screen. But that's, that's just kind of exemplifies exactly what you're saying. And I totally agree. And it's the first line of defense. And And until we realize it, we're going to be fighting an upstream battle, as you mentioned. So I want to be respectful of your time. This was super helpful and informative and great conversation, but I want to give you the opportunity to let everybody know where they can connect with you, where you hang out online, best place to read more about what you've got going on, and just promote yourself.
Awesome. Well, thank you. First of all, Mike, thank you for having me. Such a great conversation. I feel like we could talk for hours. So,
Yes,
maybe we'll do this again or something.
Yeah, definitely.
So probably the easiest place to connect is Instagram. I'm at Jenn Trepeck, JENNTREPECK. I respond to all of the DMs. Just give me a minute. I will get there. Follow me there. There's always great content. There, my podcast is Salad with a Side of Fries. So wherever you're listening now, join us over there too. And my website is betterlifenowllc.com. But you can also just DM me on Instagram and we'll connect, and I can send you a clickable link or whatever is easy. But I'd love to hear from you and what from today stuck with you, or what was new for you, or, what just reinforced what you already know, all those kinds of things.
Yeah, definitely. And I will for sure post all of that in the show notes so everybody can connect with you, Jenn, and follow you and listen to the podcast and stay up to date on everything that you've got going on. So yeah, I really appreciate your time. I took something away from this. I know that everybody listening, there were a million different takeaways. So hopefully this might be one of those episodes that you have to run through twice, and just to get all of those little gems that Jenn dropped on us. So I appreciate it very much, and we will talk soon.
Thank you so much.
Woo! There it was. We did it. So while this was a unique episode with me as the interviewee, you are, of course, still getting a nutrition nugget. You ready? This week, we're talking about 2 behaviors. Go with me for a second on this. So whether you call it a resolution, an intention, a goal, or simply something you want, we start a year with these ideas. And the truth that what all these have in common, regardless of what we call it, is that they're often end games or outcomes, right? What we identify are the results, right? And we hear all the time when we set a goal or an intention, when we know the outcome, we want to then break down the goal into intermediate goals or smaller steps, right? Maybe even break it down into a daily task. For example, let's say you want a new job. That's the goal, the intention, right? The thing you want. That's the outcome. The intermediate goals might be updating your resume or CV, contacting headhunters, or looking at available roles, researching companies, things like that. On a daily basis, though, we often feel like we have to talk ourselves into taking the step, finding the time for those extra things, figuring out the rewards or the consequences that are going to help hold us accountable, right? And that can feel like a lot. Let's simplify all this, because everything boils down to only 2 behaviors: doing and not doing. Everything boils down to 2 behaviors: doing and not doing. So check in with yourself. Are you doing or not doing? And here's the thing with this, right? Because we generally, and definitely if you're like me, we underestimate the things we are doing. We overlook so much and we focus on the things that are not happening. And in this assessment of doing or not doing, it actually forces us to acknowledge even the small things, because even a small step qualifies as doing. Now, remember, we talked about in an episode last December with Imtiaz Kabir that we get good at what we repeatedly do. Doing is the operative word there. And I want to point out, not doing is also something that we can get good at. Like, there's momentum in the not doing as much as there is momentum in the doing. And frankly, for me, the doing comes with a whole lot less mental conversation and distraction, right? Like when we're in the doing, there's no reason to beat ourselves up. We don't have any of that internal dialogue. So you can ask yourself, what's the direction of the momentum I'm creating? Am I creating momentum in the direction of doing or not doing? And if you want to change it, here's a super quick option. So this is actually from Mel Robbins' book, The 5-Second Rule. And what she says and explains to us is that when we have a thought to do something, we have 5 seconds for the prefrontal cortex, the front of the brain, to activate before the back of the brain takes over and you start to debate it. So in real life, what that might look like is we have an idea. So maybe the thought is, I want to work out today. I could do it right now. You have 5 seconds before your brain goes to, well, I'd have to change my clothes. It really wouldn't be all that long. Is that long enough to count as a workout? And what would I even do? Right? That internal dialogue, that debate that starts to happen, all that thinking happens after 5 seconds. So what's the quick fix? I got you. When you have the thought or idea to do something, count down from 5 and do it. So in this example, it would be, I want to work out today. I could do it right now. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. And just get up off the couch. So again, or maybe get up from your desk. So again, this is based in science. It's not just my own ideas. But years ago when I read Mel Robbins' book, I implemented this and it truly works. So with the whole year ahead of us, remember, there are only 2 habits, doing and not doing. So let this be your accountability as we move into 2022. All right, let's wrap this up. So as always, I'm your host, Jenn Trepeck. Connect with me on Instagram or really all social media. I'm at Jenn Trepeck, JENNTREPECK. And I would love to invite you, send me a message on any platform or even through our website, asaladwithasideoffries.com. I would love to hear your takeaways, your ideas, your questions. Plus, this is actually the easiest way to learn more about working with me. My next availability for a group program is in February. People are enrolling in that now. So if you're curious, definitely let's have a chat. I'd love to get to know you more. And of course, if you're not already, join our membership program by going to glow.fm/saladwithasideoffries or click the link in the show notes. Becoming a member shows your support for this podcast, this community, and above all, supports your health. You'll get this week's recipe for the crispy Parmesan eggs with radicchio and pea salad. And with that, my friends, here's to 2022. May it be your best year yet. Well, friends, that's it for today's episode of Salad with a Side of Fries. Congratulations for making yourself and your health a priority. Thanks so much for joining us. Be sure to click subscribe or follow on your favorite podcast platform. Share us with a friend, and we'll be back next week. Always remember, you deserve it, and you are worth it. Happy healthy.